everybody, and welcome back to KITT, Key Ideas Table Talk. I'm here again with Greg Steeves, the speech language pathologist. Thank you for coming back again.
My pleasure, Sharilyn.
I'm so excited to be able to answer some of those more in-depth questions that I know a lot of you have been asking on Facebook and YouTube, so super excited to dive right in. All right, so for our first question, what should teachers try to work with before referring students to speech?
Well, one of the key suggestions I would give, Sharilyn, would just to kind of be a little bit aware in terms of what to expect at each grade level in terms of speech and language development. So, for example, if a child had difficulty with articulating the R sound in kindergarten, that's not something at all that I'd be concerned about. However, if it's still happening in grade 2 or grade 3, then that's something that's more of a flag. And the same would be the case for language development, just to kind of have an awareness of the regular milestones.
Okay, interesting. What should teachers look for when they are referring a student?
Well, they have the very best sort of framework to work from because they have a whole group of children that same age.
Okay.
So if there's anything that sort of stands out, again, in terms of either the speech or the language development, but also in terms of if a child has a real problem with the fluency of their speaking, or if they're hoarse a lot of the time and there's something unusual about their vocal quality, I just sort of tell teachers, well, do kind of a comparison. If there's a boy or girl in your class that really stands out, then that's maybe a warning sign to even just ask a question of your local speech language pathologist, or consider taking it to your team meeting.
Okay, very good. What are some ways in which teachers can work with you? So are there full class interventions that you can be a part of, or things that you can put into place in the classroom and kind of fade out as it goes, or what sort of things could you do in that respect?
It's interesting that you ask about that, Sharilyn, because in the province over the last few years we've had quite an emphasis on response to intervention, or RTI, looking at the 3 tiers. So what you're talking about is some examples of Tier 1 interventions, and there are a variety of ways that we can help with that. For example, sometimes I will go in, and particularly with kindergarten teachers, they're not really sure about, I don't want to alarm parents in case this is just sort of a developmental thing, or the child is maybe really shy and not opening up at first. So I'll typically go in and I'll just kind of circulate amongst the students, have chats with them, and then sort of have the class list in front of me, and then go back or check in with the teacher later on and kind of say, I have concerns about this child because of their sound development, or this child because of the fluency of their talking. Maybe we should do a referral so I can kind of investigate further.
Interesting.
I've also gone in a little bit sometimes with teachers and helped them out just in terms of, what are some general maybe language stimulation things that you could be doing? So I think as an example, sometimes we tend to use grown-up or teacher talk. So an expression like all eyes on me is sort of an abstract expression, and sometimes kids might take that literally and want to actually go and put their eye on the classroom teacher. But just to help them, depending on the age of the child, particularly if they haven't been part of a daycare or a preschool setting, those kids might not have been exposed to those kinds of expressions before. So just helping teachers to learn to simplify it first and then gradually get more complex as the child grows and develops.
Super, super interesting. I never would have thought about that. As far as diversity in the classroom goes, what kind of things would you recommend in that respect?
Oh, there's a huge amount of diversity. At a school like ours, there are so many newcomers too that I'm finding, you have children who are learning English for the first time, who maybe have only been exposed to the language for a year or two, and you have the cultural diversity, and you have the diversity of home lives. I find that there's no cookie cutter approach, that you just have to be really, really open and kind of focus on what the individual needs are for that specific child. What would work with one really well might not work at all with the second one. So sometimes that provides challenges for our Tier 2 or our small group interventions, but you sort of learn, and there are advantages because sometimes students can be a good support for each other as well.
And that, again, would be nice to have that simplicity of how you talk to those students then too.
Oh, by all means.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely would.
What are some best practices that for teachers who have students with language difficulties or impairments?
Well, one best practice that we're really looking at this year and focusing on is modeling. and how important that is. So the group of the speech language pathologists who work in our school district are focusing on that for all the different areas that we talked about in our first talk. So modeling nice fluid speaking, modeling not going out on the playground and screaming or abusing your voice, modeling good use of pronouns, like you don't say me go home now, but I will go home now. So those kinds of things. And it's the same thing for parents. We, like if we can just model sort of and focus on doing that at the next level, and not getting things too complex for the child, but modeling so that they learn what the next step is in terms of the speech and language.
So you're building on those skills as opposed to just expecting a higher level.
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
So, and part of that might be responding back with the words that they use, but just doing it in maybe a grammatically correct or a speech sound production correct way so that they have the model of how they should have said it. Not necessarily even making them repeat, especially in a classroom context. We don't want them to become too self-conscious.
Right, makes sense. And what are some recommended strategies for in the classroom itself that you would give?
Well, in addition to modeling, one thing that I really focus on for both parents and teachers is the whole idea of expansion.
Okay.
And language expansion is just very simply, if a child in kindergarten is only using 3-word sentences or 3-word phrases, like something like a big black ball, you might respond back as the teacher and say, I see a big black ball. So you're giving them their same words back, but you're expanding it just a little bit further. And it's the same thing if a child is going to give you a little narrative and do a story retell. If a teacher has read a story in a classroom, they might do it very simplistically. They might give you a beginning and maybe the end, and you model back to them in terms of, well, we need to give a little more detail in the middle as well. So just kind of taking it a little level higher than what the child is currently using.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for again being part of another KITT. I hope that this is useful for everyone. I'm sure it is, because Greg is amazing. We're very thankful to have him be part of this project. So thank you again for being a part of it.
You are very welcome.
And until next time, have a great rest of your day.